Alright, hey everyone. Another video of kind of some demonstrations of what I'm kind of thinking when I'm drawing. And this one I think I'm gonna do on adaptive drawing, which is kind of like, I don't really know if other people are doing the same thing, but that's kind of just what I've named it for what I'm kind of thinking. And basically it's just kind of like turning mistakes into positives. And so let's say I made like some sort of thing like this, and or I splattered ink on my page. And this kind of, I'm doing this basically throughout my whole drawings too. And whenever I make a mistake, I am kind of finding a creative solution to change it up. And so I'll kind of like think of what this reminds me of. And I think Katsuo Terada has kind of talked about a similar thing that he does. And so kind of like taking what it looks like and then making that into something. And I've been doing that for like every part of my drawing. So kind of turning this into maybe some sort of warrior now, because it kind of looks like some sort of cool mask. And then I'll kind of like work around that mistake and then add details going around. And I'd also do this when I would make a mistake. So I'll just like purposely do something weird. So let's say I made the shoulder a little bit different than that one, and it's got a far up tilt. So maybe I didn't mean to do that, but then I'll kind of like make that into the drawing and use it as a way to figure out the rest of the characters and things like that. So I would go on detailing. Sorry for all the background noise. I just really wanted to film this video and there's a lot going on around me. But yeah, so I would kind of just keep going, and this is kind of how I draw from like line to line, because I don't have like a big idea in my head of what to do, but I'll kind of react to each line and adapt to it. So since it's tilted up, I kind of like change the detail a bit. And then from here, since it's tilted up, then I'll kind of do more of a like different arm pose since that's happening. And then kind of just adapt to it and draw him holding a sword now. This paper is definitely not made for this weight of ink, but it'll kind of be enough for demos and things like that. And then, so I kind of have like different options. I could bring the arm up. I could try to do something where it's down. So I think I'll do downward just because it probably has a little bit higher chance of not turning out. So like you can kind of see like some of the strokes I'm making aren't exactly like how I want them. So I'll just kind of like change the items and different parts as I'm doing. So then like since I have this arm all the way back, then it kind of narrows down some of the options in my head of what I want to do. So I could kind of have like a baggy arm that comes down, some sort of thing here. And then let's say this wasn't the view, or like he wasn't as far into the foreground as I wanted, then I would also change that. So something I could do to kind of adapt to this would be to pull this front arm upward and then kind of like pull him towards the front. And I do this a lot during my drawings whenever I'm doing like a more cinematic scene or trying to attempt a cinematic scene, but I want to push the character as far into the front as possible, then, and it didn't work out or I didn't push it enough, then I'll go ahead and kind of like work the character further and further upward with the rest of his details. So by adaptive drawing, I'm kind of keeping things as open as possible and leaving room for mistakes to happen. and then kind of finding creative solutions to those mistakes. So I think that's one of the most fun things that I get from drawing is actually the mistakes, which sounds kind of funny, but so yeah. Then another thing I kind of want to talk about is with the adaptive drawing is detailing. We're getting a lot of questions about detail, and I think it kind of fits with the adaptive drawing part. And a lot of the detail is kind of like me mindlessly going through and just kind of like playing around with different little parts, and then always adapting to what happens with the line, and then reacting and trying to come up with like a way to make that work. So let's say I didn't like how this shoulder comes up like that. So I can add kind of like a little cloth thing that comes off and then turn it into black and then add the same thing over here. And I always have like a lot of options if I can find them to how to keep changing the character as I go, even though I'm drawing with ink. I could draw some sort of weapon on his back here to add a little more detail to him, and then I'll kind of keep going from here. And I want to pull the hand out. And then, yeah, so something like that. And then another part that I do with like the more adaptive part is I'll probably make a whole separate video on this, but basically like the different value changes to split up the character. So I have a big gray area here, and now that it's dry more, I'll kind of start to draw over here, over this area. But I have this more gray tone here, and I decided to make the whole object that. Well, I didn't decide to, I kind of just threw down ink. But yeah, if I decided to, then I work around that and adapt to this. So since it's gray, then I have two areas of black on each side, and then I have a probably kind of ready plan to make this shoulder pad here with a bit more detail. So then I have detail, and then alternate to an area of black, and then kind of a little bit more white area, and then I could alternate again and do black on the arm guards, and then repeat that on this side. And then so I have like the same sort of thing. I could mimic what's on the other side. And then get across, and then it's detail, open white space, dark area, and then same thing. And even if you're doing color or digital art and you're not using ink or using pencil or whatever, it's still the same. You could still use like a similar thing to kind of break up features. And this is really useful for me, especially when I'm doing more complicated scenes, like with a lot of characters and a lot of different things happening. I'll have dark area, full black, a little bit lighter area, and sometimes I'll mix in detail with the lighter area, and there's kind of like little ways to get away with that, especially if it's a larger character that can kind of work. But yeah, I'm always thinking of that sort of like alternating. And then let's say that I want to push the character a little bit further, and so to kind of like adapt to this character, then what I'll do is I'll add another character, and this time I want to push my perspective more, so. But I want to keep that same sort of theme, so I'm almost copying and pasting that same warrior or soldier, but this time down here. And I'm thinking of doing the same, for this video I'll do like the same kind of detail that I'm doing in here. And then I'll add the black cloth coming around here. And then I got kind of a detail change up. And then someone asked in a previous live stream how I kind of think about where I should have too much, or how to know when there's too much detail and that sort of thing. And I think with like alternating the values and different, like it can even be different detail materials that split up items too. So like I could add fur back here, which is adding more detail, but since it's a different material, then it will split off from other things. So material changes can also split off. So I'm always thinking of more ways that I can keep adding more things to the page since I'm like super into scenes and that sort of thing. And I'll kind of almost looks like Sasquatch or Bigfoot or something. But yeah, so then I'll do the same thing and then kind of adapt to what's happened here. But I want to almost force this shoulder pad in to match with the other one. So I'll just kind of do that. Just to really push that. And then I have some fur on that other character. And then I'm just constantly adapting to kind of what is happening on the page and what strokes I'm making and things like that. And then I'll add the sword. And then before I go into shade, I'll kind of do that back plate. And however this back plate turns out, kind of along the lines of like the adaptive drawing thing, kind of like narrows down my options, which is actually a good thing because I feel like sometimes I have way too many options and it makes it like really hard to think of what to draw. And kind of like what I showed at the beginning of the video, just like placing down a like glob of paint or ink can kind of like narrow down the options and kind of give you like a creative, or at least gives me like a creative way, a creative idea pretty quickly. And then since this is like a little bit of a weird angle, I'll just kind of like adapt to it and try to keep an open mind throughout the whole drawing process and try to leave a lot of options open, but also narrowing it down, if that makes sense, to make it kind of easier to decide sometimes. And then I talk about this a lot on my live stream videos, but whenever I'm doing details, I like to like stretch and drag characters to get them to fit into perspective. I think that's the same kind of thing as the adaptive drawing. When I'm drawing, I kind of don't like split different topics up, but I think it's just kind of better for specific for videos since kind of just to split them up a little bit, but I don't want to get too crazy with it. But yeah, for kind of like adaptability for perspective, I am pulling down this character. You can kind of see on camera. Pulling down the details of the character and heading downward, kind of arcing his body down. And I can bring his arm out and kind of imagining some sort of where it would be and just kind of like going for it. I'm not trying to be too specific or too accurate on it. Especially if it's a really hard thing to pull off. I find myself lately just been going for it and kind of winging it and then just adapting to what happens afterwards. Since if I think about it too long, I'm probably gonna overthink it and it just won't turn out because I've like made it such a big deal in my mind that it it's kind of just not gonna happen to how I wanted it in the first half. And then I think I will squeeze this back arm and kind of try to pull off gripping the sword. It's kind of a good example here. So this sword is not really gonna fit. So what I'd usually do is just kind of like bend it to however I want it to. So I have this sword coming out, and I'll just kind of like sneak the placement to where now it will line up. And I could honestly, since this area is still light, one thing I could do is actually just kind of like go through his head with it. And thing I can do after the value goes in there, I can split it up. And then I'll kind of pull this arm down, just guessing where it would be. And then I want to pull the armor down more. Then I could color this dark area in, the armor there. And then now that I have the armor figured out for this character, then I can kind of know what to do for this next one. So yeah, for me, this kind of like adaptability really helps me for drawing from imagination. And I think it might help some other people if you're kind of worried about mistakes and that sort of thing, especially if you're trying to go from you don't draw much from imagination and you mostly draw from reference. I think this is kind of can be a good way to maybe transition and get used to kind of making mistakes and getting some value out of it. I think I honestly make a mistake probably like every 3 lines, or maybe even more. And those are only mistakes that I find. So you know, someone else could come by and probably point out a lot more. But it's not something I'm really worried about since mistakes are kind of what makes my drawings, and it's what I have fun with. So I kind of just will continue this character downward. And then this is kind of like the alternating. So black area, detail, white, open white. And then so I'll alternate and make this black. And that will sort of like split off from this character's sword. And since I kind of messed up and wanted to drag the sword outward to that spot, then now this is kind of, this dark area here is strengthening that idea a little bit more since it's a dark area. And then if I wanted to keep going, I could kind of just like keep drawing characters over and over across the page. And if I wanted to go more with this same idea, I could keep drawing the same idea and then basing it from character to character and using that as sort of like my in the moment reference to get around the drawing in the different parts. And same armor, kind of get easier to tell what it is. like all my drawings end up being some sort of samurai themed thing. That's fine. I think they're really cool, especially from a like art standpoint. Now I'll do the white cloth and kind of just like flying through here, but get in some sort of ground placement. And now that I have this character touching the floor, then he is like basically confirming for me where my floor is now. So like these other characters in front are basically just pushing them in different directions and pushing and pulling to get them closer and closer to the front. But then the first character I draw that's actually on the floor, then I will like kind of determine that my ground is now here. But floors can be very like very hilly and change a lot. So I could have like it is hilly or bumpy as I really wanted to. And then like the surface could always change. I could draw a character flying and then kind of like come up with a reason for why he's flying. So that's kind of like the creative, like adaptive part that I like to play around in with my drawings. Now I kind of just go in with some diluted ink to finish it off. And that's, and then like, so I do like the hill over here. So maybe I draw a little bit of this character's shadow off that hill back there. Now I'm leaving open area for the sword. And then what I was talking about to make this sword a lot more believable and make that mistake work, then I can fix it when I go into my values and shading. So now I mean, you still see these lines, but there's just like a lot a lot of ways to get out of different situations that you maybe didn't plan for. So yeah, I think lately mistakes have been kind of one of my favorite things. And then I could add some cast shadow, make this character a little bit of light in his mask there. And so yeah, kind of hopefully quick demo. Well, it's 23 minutes, but kind of just wanted a more chill kind of thing. And yeah, so this is basically what I would call like adaptive drawing. And I think it's, for me, it's a really important thing for drawing from imagination since I don't use direct reference. This kind of really helps still create scenes and kind of not be afraid to make mistakes. So yeah, I think that's kind of the biggest use that I have for this. And I mean, there's probably a lot of people doing this. It's probably like a common thing, but yeah, I just kind of wanted to explain my outlook on it. So yeah, kind of like explain how I do details, a little bit of perspective, and how to make the scene very adaptive, and all the characters and different details kind of all work together and create the scene as I go. So yeah, it's gonna be it for this video. Sorry if it's a little bit longer than my previous ones, but I really wanted to make this video, and I apologize for all the background noise. It's kind of busy around here, but yeah, thanks for watching.